Simon's number calling. Simon, where have you been? Why can't I call you?
Hello, is it Mrs. Green?
Yes, who is it?
Ma'am, are you at home and could you find a place to sit down?
Excuse me? Yes. What's happening?
Ma'am, your husband, Simon Green, was rescued from a house fire. He is at our hospital right now.
What? Where is he right now? How is he?
I'll send you the address of the hospital via text. Fortunately, your husband is in stable condition.
Oh God, thank God.
Ma'am, we'd appreciate it if you could make your way to the hospital as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. I'm coming. I'm Hillary, and I've been married to my husband Simon for almost a decade now. We have had our ups and downs, but for the most part, we have been happy together. Of course, we have had our fair share of arguments, but who hasn't? Our biggest issue was always about our children. We have a daughter and a son who are 8 and 5 years old. It's not that I thought I cared more about them than my husband did, but we had very different ideas about how to raise them. I had always been more focused on their education and making sure they have a good future, while Simon was more laid back. I wanted Simon to spend more time with them, but he had always been so busy with work, and I was left to feel like I had to do everything for them. At first, we were able to compromise and find a middle ground. But as the years went on, our disagreements became more frequent and more intense. I always felt like I was the one who made the compromises just to make my husband comfortable. It got to the point where we were constantly fighting about it, and it was putting a strain on our marriage. I knew something had to change, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to give up on my marriage, but I also couldn't keep living like this. It was a difficult time and I wasn't sure how we were going to get through it. I started feeling really lonely and overwhelmed in my own marriage. Simon's behavior had changed, as he seemed distant and uninterested in our marriage. I began feeling like he was getting colder and colder by the day. My mind started racing with all sorts of horrible thoughts, and I couldn't help but wonder if he was seeing someone else. I tried to check his phone, paying attention to his clothes and any other details that could confirm my suspicions, but I couldn't find anything. Simon had always been good at covering his tracks, and I couldn't find a single shred of evidence to support my fears. Then I tried trusting him. I worked on my own self-esteem and convinced myself that I was just being paranoid. Despite my efforts, I couldn't stop the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. I was consumed by my fears, and it was affecting every aspect of my life. I couldn't concentrate at work, and I was constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. To make matters worse, Simon would be working late sometimes, and he would never even try to reassure me that he got me in the back of his mind. I was always left at home wondering if he was spending time with another woman. One night, I mustered up the courage to confront him. I asked if there was anything that made him unhappy about our marriage and if he was seeing someone else. Simon brushed it off and told me that I was just overthinking. He told me that I might just be too tired from caring for the kids, and that in just a few years I would be spending more time working and our marriage would get better. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. I knew that something was wrong. One day, I dropped the kids off at school and followed my husband as he drove to work. I felt like a crazy woman, but it was what I had to do to put my mind at ease. I promised myself that if I didn't find anything suspicious, I would turn myself to therapy instead of suspecting my husband all the time. As I followed him, I found out that he was driving to buy some flowers and then to visit a strange house. I had never seen it before. My heart sank as I watched him text someone and then wait for them to open the gate. It was a woman. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind was racing with all sorts of questions and doubts. Who was this woman? Why was Simon visiting her? Was he really cheating on me? I was ready to catch him red-handed, but then I realized that I knew that woman. She was Patricia, his mother's former neighbor and close friend. His mother had passed away a few years back, and Patricia was one of her closest people. It all started to make sense now. I checked the calendar and saw that it was a few weeks prior to Mother's Day. He must have been visiting her to make sure that she was doing well despite his mother's passing. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. All the doubts and suspicions vanished, and I felt ashamed for doubting Simon. I realized that I had been so blinded by my own insecurities that I hadn't given him the benefit of the doubt. Plus, I thought it was sweet that he visited the house of his mother's friend for that special day. I was reminded of what a loving and affectionate person that my husband was. That night, I was relieved to know that my husband wasn't doing anything behind my back. However, our problem stayed unresolved. Simon remained cold and distant. He didn't seem to want to talk to me or even be near me. When our children came to him eager to play, he pushed them aside again and watched TV alone. It was like he had shut himself off from his own family, and I couldn't figure out why. I constantly blamed myself because now that I know he wasn't cheating, it felt like I was the one to blame. Was it me that made this marriage so suffocating to him? I tried to talk to him, but he would always brush me off. To make matters worse, just a few days after that, he announced that he was going on a business trip in the next few days. He didn't even bother to ask me if it was okay. He was just letting me know. I was hurt and angry that he didn't even consider talking to me about it. We had a huge fight. I can't believe you just announced that you are going on a business trip without even asking me if it's okay. Do you not care about how I feel?
It's just a business trip, Hillary. I didn't think it was a big deal.
Of course it is a big deal. You can't just leave me with the kids and not even talk to me about it. I have my own work and responsibilities too.
But this is an important trip for my career. I thought you would understand.
I do understand, but that doesn't mean you can just make decisions without me. We are a team, remember?
I'm sick of this, Hillary. I can't make decisions for myself anymore.
What? You're being unreasonable. You need to communicate with me in a more thoughtful way. This is not about you making decisions for yourself. This is about how your decisions affect all of us. He didn't say anything and just walked out of the room. I was left standing there feeling frustrated and alone. It was as if no matter what I said, Simon wouldn't listen. The next few days were hard. Simon didn't call me or even text me. I didn't know where he was or what he was doing. I tried to keep myself busy with work and looking after the kids, but it was hard without him there. Plus, I couldn't even contact him. It was as if I was a burden to him, and not his wife or the mother of his kids. I knew that he might have been too occupied with the meetings, but still, something told me that that was not the real reason. Finally, I got a call from the middle of the night. It was from his number, but a stranger's voice was on it. The moment I heard that strange voice, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Simon, where have you been? Why can't I call you?
Hello, is it Mrs. Green?
Yes, who is it?
Ma'am, are you at home and could you find a place to sit down?
Excuse me? Yes, what's happening?
Ma'am, your husband, Simon Green, was rescued from a house fire. He is at our hospital right now.
What? Where is he right now? How is he?
I'll send you the address of the hospital via text. Fortunately, your husband is in stable condition.
Oh God, thank God.
Ma'am, we would appreciate it if you could make your way to the hospital as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm coming. My heart started racing as I imagined the worst. What had happened? Was he really okay? I went straight to the hospital, eager to see my husband. I made my way to the emergency room where I saw Simon lying on a hospital bed unconscious. However, what I didn't expect was a familiar figure lying on the bed right next to him. That was Patricia? I freaked out, realizing that Simon was taken there together with Patricia. I was so confused with what happened that I needed a few minutes to process all of the information. Simon was supposed to be on a business trip to another city, and yet he was there with Patricia? I tried to ask the nurse what had happened, but she wouldn't tell me anything in detail. All she said was that they were both being treated for smoke inhalation. I couldn't bear the suspense, so I asked for the address of the house on fire. As I suspected, it was Patricia's house. My mind was racing with all sorts of possibilities. Had they been having an affair? Was Simon cheating on me with Patricia? As I was lost in thought, one of the hospital staff approached me.
Excuse me, ma'am, but we found something concerning in their belongings. They were both naked when they were brought in.
My heart sank as she handed me a plastic bag containing some partly burned clothes with some expensive pieces of jewelry. I didn't know what to say. The hospital staff looked at me with such sympathetic eyes, as if I was the last person on this planet to finally figure out what was going on in my own marriage. My mind was spinning with all sorts of thoughts and emotion. I felt like I was going to puke. My husband sleeping with a woman his mom's age behind my back? How could I have imagined something like that? And to lie to me that he was on a business trip? I just couldn't bear the image of my husband and Patricia together. That day when he visited her to give her the flowers, and after that he would come home to me and our children like he did nothing wrong. I thought that I would never be able to leave that out of my memory. I was shaken and disgusted to the core. After I found out about Simon and Patricia, I left the hospital right away. I couldn't bear to see them or hear any more about what had happened. My mind was made up. I was completely shocked by what I had seen and heard, and I knew that I wanted a divorce. When I got home, I started preparing for divorce immediately. I didn't want to waste any time. I hired a lawyer, and we began the process of separating our assets and making arrangements for custody of our children. What's more, I called the reporters and set up meetings to tell them about our story. They say never air your dirty laundry in front of others, but I disagree. I didn't care about getting embarrassed anymore. I wanted people to know the kinds of people Simon and Patricia were, and the reporters didn't hesitate to jump right into such a hot topic. Cheating husband caught in a house fire? That story should be all over the town's news. It was a difficult time for me. But I knew that I couldn't stay married to someone who had cheated on me and betrayed my trust. I deserved better, and I was determined to get it. In the end, Simon and Patricia were understandably embarrassed in front of everyone we knew. Our social circle was small, and the news of their affair had spread quickly. They both lost friends and respect in the community. After a few months, I heard that they were broken up and that Patricia was forced to move somewhere else. I never had to see her face again. After the divorce was final, Simon also had to pay an enormous amount of child support, which he struggled to keep up with. He had always been a successful businessman, but the scandal had damaged his reputation and cost him his clients. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life and moving forward. It wasn't easy, but I found strength in my children and in the support of my family and friends. I also started taking care of myself and pursuing my passions, which helped me heal and find joy in life again. Eventually, I met someone new, a kind and loving man who respected and cherished me. His name was Dave. We fell in love and got married, and he became a wonderful stepfather to my children. With him by my side, I felt happy and fulfilled. Years went by, and I looked back on that dark time as a distant memory. Simon and Patricia had long faded from my life, and I was grateful to have moved on and found true happiness. In the end, I learned that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the greatest growth and blessings. I was grateful for the lessons I had learned and for the love and joy that filled my life. And I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would always have the strength and resilience to overcome them.